cats don't care about vampires. Spring and Forks lasted about 3 days. Like a temperamental goddess who couldn't commit to her vacation plans, Pacific Northwest seasons came and went with the reliability of vampire promises. Bella Swan was determined to enjoy every second of it, even if she had to wrestle sunshine out of the universe with her bare hands. The Cullen deck had never felt so alive. Warm golden sunlight filtered through the evergreens, dappling the old cedar planks and soaking into Bella's jeans as she sat cross-legged with a mug of tea that had been steeping so long it could probably tell fortunes. Somewhere in the trees, a chickadee sang like it had been waiting all winter to audition for a Disney soundtrack, hitting notes that would make Snow White's birds seethe with professional jealousy. She breathed in the scent of damp moss and pine needles, the perfume of the Pacific Northwest that no department store could ever bottle, then smiled when the floor creaked behind her with the telltale sound of immortal footsteps. "You know," Jasper drawled, his southern accent dripping like honey from a tilted jar, "for someone constantly surrounded by the undead, you spend a suspicious amount of time chasing sunshine." His voice carried the weight of someone who'd lived long enough to know that sunshine, like most good things, was fleeting. Bella turned her head and smiled. Jasper Whitlock Cullen, in all his boot-wearing, slow-talking, emotionally intuitive glory, stood just behind her with his own mug in hand. The steam rising from it carried the rich aroma of black coffee. Vampires could consume human food and drink, their supernatural bodies absorbing it completely, even if it provided no nutritional benefit. She raised hers in greeting. "Still clinging to my humanity. Vitamin D is cheaper than therapy." Jasper chuckled, a sound like distant thunder wrapped in velvet, and settled beside her on the bench, stretching out his long legs that had probably raced alongside wild horses once upon a time. They fell into silence, the easy kind that had started forming between them over the last few months. Ever since Jasper had stopped pretending he was invisible and Bella had stopped pretending she wasn't curious about what made him tick. And tick he did, quietly, carefully, like a loaded clock waiting for someone to ask the right question, or perhaps diffuse the wrong one. But today wasn't about questions. Today was about tea, sunshine, and maybe some awkward flirting if she felt brave enough to test the waters with a vampire whose entire existence was one long exercise in self-control. A rustling noise interrupted her thoughts, louder than the whispers of wind through pine. Bella blinked, tilting her head toward the tree line. "Did you hear that?" she asked, though asking a vampire if they heard something was like asking fish if they noticed water. "Yeah," Jasper said, sitting up straighter, his posture shifting from relaxed to alert with the fluid grace of a predator who'd never quite forgotten how to hunt. They both turned toward the sound as a blur of silver-gray fur emerged from the underbrush, trotting toward the deck like it had an invitation written in catnip. It was a cat, no collar, no hesitation, just confidence and green eyes sharp enough to cut glass, the kind of eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations and found them all equally underwhelming. The cat trotted up the steps, stopped in front of Bella, and gave a long, judgmental stare that would have made even Rosalie take notes. Then, meow. The sound was ordinary, but something in it reached beyond ears. Bella blinked. "Hello there." Her voice held the uncertain tone of someone who suspected they were about to star in their own personal Twilight Zone episode. "Meow," the cat repeated, and this time the sound vibrated through her mind, not as sound, but as words. "Finally! Took you long enough to notice me. I've been doing the supernatural equivalent of waving neon signs at your psyche for weeks." Bella's jaw dropped like it was auditioning for a cartoon. "Did you just?" The question hung in the air, incomplete but perfectly understood. The cat's mouth didn't move, but the voice was perfectly clear in her head, dripping with the kind of sarcasm that took centuries to perfect. "Yes, I did. And before you ask, no, this isn't normal for most humans. Yes, it means something. No, I'm not going to explain everything at once, because where's the fun in that?" Jasper raised an eyebrow so perfectly arched it could have supported architectural weight. "What just happened?" Bella turned wide eyes on him. "The cat just Talked. She said it with the same tone someone might use to announce they'd just seen Elvis riding a unicorn through the Walmart parking lot. Jasper's hand froze halfway to his mug. What now? For once, the empath looked genuinely surprised, which was like catching a meteorologist looking shocked at rain. She just said something. In my head. Bella stared at the cat, who looked incredibly smug for something covered in moss and woodland debris, wearing the expression of a creature who just won a bet with the universe. About time your aura opened up, the cat said. Took me 3 visits and a moon cycle just to get through that human static. You're broadcasting on all frequencies, but receiving on none. Typical. Okay, Bella whispered. I'm officially losing it. She glanced around, half expecting to see cameras or Edward jumping out to announce this was all an elaborate birthday prank. 5 months early. Not necessarily, Jasper muttered, his golden eyes narrowing. I felt something just now. Not words, not thoughts, but something pushed. He gestured vaguely at the space between them, as if trying to grab invisible threads of conversation. The cat stretched luxuriously and leapt onto the bench between them, claiming the middle spot like it was a throne specifically designed for feline royalty. Right, Bella said, blinking rapidly. Just making sure I understand. You're a talking cat. Her life had already included vampires, werewolves, and Italian vampire royalty with a flair for the dramatic. What was one more supernatural being on the bingo card? Technically, the voice replied with the patient condescension of a professor addressing a particularly slow student. I'm a familiar. The name's Mabs, short for Mabigail. Don't laugh. My witch had a sense of humor that died with the Black Plague. Bella didn't laugh. She just stared, wondering if this was what Alice felt like when visions overtook her reality. Jasper, however, chuckled, a warm sound that melted through the air like butter on hot toast. Mabigail? Mabs whipped her head toward him with the speed of a striking cobra. You, cowboy delicious. Your aura is like someone put cinnamon in a shotgun. All spice and violence wrapped in southern charm. Fascinating. Do you always look this good when you're confused? Sexy boots? Jasper blinked. That's new. He looked equal parts offended and intrigued, an expression he'd perfected after decades of living with Alice. Wait, Bella said slowly, turning toward him. You can hear her now? Her finger pointed back and forth between vampire and cat like she was tracking an invisible tennis match. Jasper hesitated. Sort of. It's like she let me in. He tapped his temple. Selective broadcasting. I did. You passed the vibe check. Most vampires have the emotional intelligence of a parking meter. The what? You didn't flinch when I insulted your energy field. That's rare for a vampire. You're weird. I like it. Your girlfriend here is also weird, but in a more danger magnet meets stubborn mule kind of way. Bella buried her face in her hands. I'm sitting on a vampire's porch in the spring sunshine, talking to a telepathic cat named Mabigail. I've officially lost the plot. Her voice came out muffled through her fingers. Edward is never going to believe this. Better than watching reruns of your own trauma, Mabs offered sweetly, which, by the way, is what you do most evenings. Very boring to watch from the trees. Okay, rude. Bella dropped her hands to glare at the cat. Have you been spying on me? Observing. There's a difference. One comes with a paycheck. Jasper was trying very hard not to laugh again when the deck door swung open behind them with enough force to startle birds from nearby trees. Well, came Emmett's booming voice, carrying the subtle nuance of a foghorn. Isn't this cozy? His massive frame filled the doorway like a mountain deciding to wear a Henley. Bella turned to find Emmett standing there, looking far too amused for someone who just walked in on what was potentially a supernatural crisis. Are we feeding stray animals now? Is that a thing? He grinned. Because I've got some ideas about a grisly sanctuary that Rose keeps shutting down. Bella raised her mug and pointed at the cat, now curled on her lap, making herself at home like she'd signed a lease. She talks? Emmett blinked, his perpetual grin faltering for half a second. Say what now? She talks. Bella enunciated each word like she was teaching a foreign language. She's a familiar, Jasper added casually, as if discussing the weather rather than a telepathic feline. Apparently freelance. Mabs stretched her paws over Bella's knees, extending razor-sharp claws before retracting them in a subtle threat display. I freelance for witches, warlocks, and morally confused empaths. Occasionally, I bless cursed socks. It's a living. The benefits package includes 9 lives and the ability to judge everyone silently. Emmett leaned forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over them all. No way, this cat has better comebacks than Rose. His eyes gleamed with the delight of someone who just discovered a new form of entertainment. That's because I'm not trying to impress you, big guy. I've met mountains with more subtlety. Though I'll need to meet the rest of the Vampire Brady bunch, especially that Ed-weird character I've seen brooding around, the constipated-looking one who stares at trees like they personally offended his great-great-grand vampire. Emmett let out a bark of laughter that probably registered on local seismographs. Oh, I like her. Can we keep her? I promise to feed and water her. Well, feed her. Watering cats seems unnecessarily cruel. Bella shook her head, her hair catching sunlight like spun mahogany. I still don't know why she's here. She looked down at the purring bundle of fur and attitude in her lap. Because you need me. The mental voice was softer now, almost gentle. For what? Bella asked, genuine curiosity overriding her disbelief. Emotional support. Witchy oversight. Someone to tell you when your boy trouble is about to become a full-blown love triangle, worthy of a daytime soap opera. Mister. Constipation face isn't the only option, you know. I mean, the cat's eyes flickered meaningfully toward Jasper. There's sexy drawl over here who actually knows how to smile without looking like he's passing a kidney stone. Bella choked on her tea, sputtering droplets onto her jeans while her face flamed hotter than a newborn vampire's thirst. Jasper sat very still. The kind of stillness only the undead could achieve, like a statue contemplating whether to run for the hills or stay for the show. Emmett slapped the railing with enough force to splinter the wood. This is the best day I've had in months. His grin was wide enough to shame the Cheshire cat. Wait till Edward hears about this. And that's when the door opened again, the hinges creaking ominously, like they knew exactly what kind of dramatic entrance they were soundtracking. Oh look, Mabs's voice dripped with feline delight as her tail swished mischievously. Here comes Edward Constipation himself. Perfect timing. I do love a good supernatural soap opera. Chapter 2. Edward stepped out onto the deck, his perpetually tousled bronze hair looking like it had been specifically styled to catch non-existent sparkles. His face was set in his default expression, pained concentration, as if the weight of a century of brooding was physically taxing. He took one look at the assembled group, Bella on the bench with a strange cat in her lap, Jasper sitting suspiciously close to her, and the entire family gathered around like they were witnessing a particularly entertaining supernatural soap opera. His perfect features contorted into a frown that could curdle milk. Your heart's got 2 doorways, and both of them are open, Mabs announced suddenly, her mental voice broadcasting to everyone present. One leads to broody McConstipation over there, her tail flicked toward Edward, and the other to Southern Comfort right here. Her paw gently batted at Jasper's arm. Bella coughed, sputtered, and waved her hand in front of her face, like she was trying to physically erase the cat's words from existence. I'm sorry, what? Bella stared at her, face blazing hotter than a vampire in a blast furnace. That doesn't even make sense. Though deep down, in places she refused to examine by daylight, it made dangerous, perfect sense. It makes perfect sense if you'd stop thinking in straight lines. The universe deals in curves, honey, and speaking of curves, Mab's gaze drifted meaningfully toward Jasper. Jasper shifted slightly beside her, his thigh now barely brushing against hers. She didn't look at him, couldn't look at him, but she felt the shift in his emotions like static through her skin. Curiosity, concern, and a tiny undercurrent of heat that made her ears go pink. His fingers drummed once on the back of the bench, just enough to send electricity down her spine. Emmett was beyond delighted. He looked like Christmas had come with vampiric superpowers and a winning lottery ticket. Wait, are we talking about a real love triangle? Like Team Eduardo versus Team Sexy Cowboy? He wiggled his eyebrows with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer. Because I've been silently shipping this for months. Bella shot him a glare that would have incinerated a lesser immortal. Don't you have weights to bench or something? Bears to antagonize? He grinned, utterly unbothered. Nah, this is better. Drama and a magical cat. We're just missing a popcorn and a betting pool, which, by the way, already exists. Alice started it in January. The sliding glass door opened again with a theatrical whisper. Rosalie, perfectly dressed in a cream knit sweater and jeans that had no business being that clean in the woods. She stepped out with a raised brow that could cut glass. Not a hair dared to be out of place, as if her golden locks feared repercussions. I heard laughing, she said, scanning the gathered immortals. What did Emmett break? A house? Someone's spirit? The laws of physics again? Nothing, Bella muttered, slouching deeper into herself. Just my grip on reality. Rosalie noticed the cat and tilted her head, her perfect features rearranging into a rare expression of genuine curiosity. Is that talking? In your head? She tapped her own temple with a manicured finger. Yes, Bella, Jasper, and Emmett all said at once, a supernatural chorus of confirmation. Rosalie blinked. Okay, I'll bite. A small, predatory smile curved her lips. Please don't, Mabs replied, lifting her nose with aristocratic disdain. You jip a fang. I'm nothing but fur, attitude, and ancient secrets. Rosalie's smile widened into something genuine. I like her. She looked at Bella with newfound respect. Your weirdness is finally paying dividends. Bella groaned and leaned her head against Jasper's shoulder without thinking, seeking comfort in his solid presence. His arm didn't move away. If anything, it got more comfortable there, his fingers just barely touching her upper arm, his thumb tracing the ghost of a circle. A low, almost imperceptible rumble, a purr, vibrated through his chest. Vampire males only purred for their mates, and the sound sent a ripple of shock through the assembled Cullens. Jasper cut it off immediately, looking as surprised as everyone else. Mabs purred smugly, a feline echo. See? Doorway number 1. Sexy Boots is already tuning up his engine for you. Bella sat bolt upright, nearly launching the cat from her lap. Okay, seriously. Explain. What love triangle? There's no triangle. Her voice had climbed several octaves. Mabs rolled onto her back and looked up at her with upside-down judgment. A furry therapist who charged in sardonic comments rather than hourly rates. There's always a triangle, sweetheart. It's the universe's favorite shape, next to spirals and whatever geometric nightmare your hair is attempting. You're the human with the curious heart. There's the vampire who left you, Mr. Sulk and Brood, and the one who stayed, Captain Emotional Intelligence. It's basic romantic geometry. Even a cat can do that math. Bella's eyes flicked toward Jasper, whose mouth quirked into the faintest smirk, one that did unreasonable things to her heart rate. Those Texan lips shouldn't be allowed to curve like that without warning signs posted. I didn't stay, he said quietly, his honey-warm voice gentle with truth. Not at first. There was a painful acknowledgement in his voice, the ghost of an attack on a birthday no one mentioned anymore. No, Mab said, rolling back onto her paws. But you're staying now. And that, cowboy delicious, is what separates the men from the Ed Wieners of the world. The back door creaked again, the soundtrack to Bella's continuing mortification. Alice twirled out, in a flurry of silk and floral perfume, barefoot, already grinning like someone who'd won a bet with destiny. There's magic on the deck. I smelled it from upstairs, right between Emmett's terrible jokes and Bella's sexual confusion. Of course you did, Bella mumbled, wishing the deck would swallow her whole. Oh, Alice sang, kneeling to scratch Mabs behind the ears with the perfect pressure. You're cute, witchborn, right? I've been having visions of whiskers for weeks. And well-fed, Mabs agreed, leaning into the scratches with shameless pleasure. Unlike your fashion sense, mixing peonies with lavender? Rookie move. Next, you'll tell me Eduardo's hair disaster is intentional and not the result of a tragic encounter with electricity. Alice gasped, her golden eyes widening with delighted outrage. She's rude. I love her. Can we keep her? I'll build her a custom bed from Italian leather. Bella watched her rub cheeks with Mabs and muttered, I guess she passes the vibe check. Barely, Mabs said, licking her paw and then using it to smooth an already perfect eyebrow. The psychic energy is strong, but the perfume is fighting with my fur's natural, magnificent scent. Seriously, though, Alice said, straightening with dancer's grace. Why is there a magical talking cat cuddled on your lap like a Bond villain pet? Are you secretly planning world domination? Because I have outfit ideas for that. She's here to help, Jasper said, with a shrug that somehow managed to flex every muscle in his upper body without apparent effort. Alice looked from him to Bella, then smirked with all the subtlety of a neon sign. Oh, this is about your feelings. She pointed at Bella's chest. The ones you pretend not to have when Broody McSparkles isn't around. Can we not? Bella said, weakly, wishing she had vampire speed to flee into the forest. Nope, Emmett said, crossing his massive arms and planting his feet like an anchor. This is the best Thursday since 1974. I'm never leaving. Rose, get the camera. This needs documentation. The door opened again. Esme stepped out, followed by Carlisle. Esme carried a glass of lemonade and a small plate of cookies. The eternal mother with eternal snacks. Oh, she said brightly. I thought I heard voices. Who's our guest? Her eyes landed on the cat with unabashed delight. Carlisle followed her gaze to the cat, his centuries of medical experience immediately recognizing something beyond the ordinary. Ah, a familiar? Fascinating. I haven't seen one since Vienna in 1838. Dr. Cullen, Mabs said with a polite nod of her regal head. You keep a tidy aura. I approve. Unlike some members of your coven who splash emotions around like toddlers in a bathtub. Carlisle looked pleasantly surprised. Thank you. I've spent centuries on emotional regulation. Esme beamed, radiating maternal warmth like a supernatural sun. Would she like something to eat? I just got a delivery from that organic butcher in Port Angeles. Yes, Mabs said, her mental voice taking on the tone of a food critic at a 5-star restaurant. But I'm picky. No dry food, no seafood, and absolutely no canned stuff shaped like little chickens. I have standards. Perhaps some lightly seared tuna, room temperature with a side of dignity. I'll see what I can do, Esme replied, already mentally revising her grocery list to include gourmet cat delicacies. Bella stared at her tea like it might offer answers, or possibly a portal to another dimension. Preferably one without telepathic matchmaking felines. A familiar, a not-so-subtle love triangle accusation, and now the entire Cullen family, out here chatting like this was normal? Like strange animals pointing out her complicated feelings for her ex-boyfriend's brother, was just another Thursday in Vampire Land. Only one person was missing. One perfectly coiffed, eternally constipated-looking mind reader. And like the universe had been waiting for a cue in some cosmic sitcom, the deck door creaked open one final time, a death knell to Bella's afternoon of peace. Well, well, well. Mabs's voice dripped with satisfaction in everyone's minds. If it isn't Eddie Scissorhands himself, right on cue and looking exactly as constipated as advertised. I bet he practices that face in the mirror, the I haven't pooped since World War I special. Jasper's body tensed slightly beside Bella, but his thumb continued its gentle circles on her shoulder. A barely perceptible rumble started in his chest again, before he caught himself. Oh, don't stop on my account, hot stuff, Mabs purred. That's the first genuinely interesting sound I've heard since I got here. Much better than Broody's piano dirges. The tension on the deck crystallized like amber, capturing this perfect moment of supernatural awkwardness for posterity. Everyone stared at Edward, waiting for his reaction. Edward's eyes narrowed as he focused intently on the cat. Chapter 3. I can't hear her thoughts, Edward said, his voice tight as a violin string about to snap. "Why can't I hear her thoughts?" Mabs stretched luxuriously, flexing each claw in turn. "Because, Edward, some of us know how to close our mental doors, something your girlfriend here could learn before sexy jeans and boots picks up any more of her feelings." Bella's mortification was complete. Her cheeks flamed red enough to rival the most vibrant sunset as Edward's presence sucked the fun right out of the air like a supernatural vacuum set to judgmental brooding. He took another step forward, eyes narrowing at the cozy scene, Bella blushing on the bench with Jasper sitting comfortably close, Mabs purring like a content dictator in her lap, Emmett and Alice grinning like idiots while Carlisle and Esme stood by with their offerings of gourmet snacks. "Allow me to introduce myself properly, broody McMindreader," Mabs projected, her mental voice dripping with feline satisfaction. "Mabigail of the Silver Whiskers, familiar extraordinaire, and apparently the only one here brave enough to point out the emotional elephant stomping around your coven." "Is that a street cat?" Edward asked, voice dripping with disdain. His nostrils flared slightly as though trying to detect if the creature carried diseases, or worse, opinions. "She has a name," Bella said without looking at him, her fingers continuing to stroke Mabs's silvery fur. The casual dismissal hung in the air between them like a challenge. Edward took another step forward, his movements stiff as though he were walking on eggshells, or perhaps his own shattered expectations. "You're feeding it?" The horror in his voice suggested she might as well be nurturing a small nuclear weapon. "Her," Bella corrected, emphasizing the pronoun with uncharacteristic steel in her voice. "Yes, 2 simple syllables that somehow conveyed, 'And what are you going to do about it?'" "She talks," Emmett offered helpfully, completely unbothered and clearly enjoying the mounting tension. His massive frame practically vibrated with barely contained laughter. "Like, in our heads, it's awesome. She has opinions about your hair." Edward blinked, looking momentarily so stunned that Bella half expected dust to fall from his frozen eyelashes. "You've been talking to a cat?" His tone suggested they'd all been conversing with a particularly chatty lamp. Mabs yawned, long and loud, displaying a pink tongue and impressively sharp teeth. Her stretch was deliberate and luxurious, like royalty awakening from a nap on peasants. Oh joy. "The perpetual rain cloud has opinions," Mabs projected with theatrical weariness. "The Baron of Buzzkill, the Prince of Perpetual Pouting, the Ambassador of Angsty Glances, has descended from his Tower of Torment to grace us with his disapproval." Edward's brows pulled together in a furrow deep enough to plant crops. "Did that thing just insult me?" He pointed at Mabs as though she might be confused about which thing he meant. "Correction," Mabs said, eyes gleaming like polished emeralds containing centuries of judgment. "I insulted your vibe. Your whole dramatic cloud boy energy. It's exhausting. You're like a walking Shakespearean tragedy without the interesting plot or character development. At least Hamlet had some witty lines." Emmett snorted so hard he almost fell over the railing, catching himself at the last moment with vampire reflexes. Even Rosalie's perfect lips twitched toward a smile. Bella, very calmly, stroked behind Mabs's ears, her fingers finding that perfect spot that made the familiar purr like a luxury sports car. "She's a familiar, magical, possibly clairvoyant, definitely rude. I like her." The last 3 words were delivered with deliberate eye contact at Edward. Edward tugged at his perfectly styled hair, frustration evident in every line of his immortal face. "This is ridiculous. You're all encouraging this. Bella, you can't seriously want this creature around." There was a note of pleading in his voice now, as if he were the reasonable one in a world gone mad. "I'm only dangerous to egos and shoes," Mab said, with a flick of her tail that somehow conveyed deep disdain. "And maybe people who try to shoo me. Well, and occasionally curtains when I'm feeling particularly villainous. But Mr. Hot Boots over here understands that chaos is an essential spice of immortal existence." She batted playfully at Jasper's hand, which had casually drifted closer to Bella's shoulder. Edward glared, his beautiful face tightening into a mask of disapproval. "Bella, she's an unknown magical entity." "She's a cat, Edward." Bella interrupted, her patience visibly thinning like ice in springtime. She's talking in your mind. Edward's voice climbed several octaves, the closest a vampire could come to sputtering. She's not the only one who's done that, Bella snapped, tone sharp enough to slice through his indignation. The reference to his mind-reading abilities hung in the air like a perfectly delivered checkmate. The deck went very, very quiet. Even the forest seemed to hold its breath. Jasper's arm didn't move from its casual place behind Bella's back. But the subtle shift in his energy was like a soft hum of protection, a boundary Edward could feel even without touching it. A barely audible rumble, a vampire's contentment purr, vibrated briefly from his chest before he caught himself. "Ooh," Mabs broadcasted delightedly. "He purrs for you. That's rare. Very, very rare. Only happens when a vampire male finds his That's enough," Jasper murmured, though his eyes danced with something that looked suspiciously like amusement. And something deeper. Mads turned around in Bella's lap to face Edward fully, her tail swishing like a hypnotist's watch. "Let me guess, Eduardo Sulkington. You left her for her own good. Came back thinking she'd be waiting like a perfectly preserved museum exhibit of devotion. And now you're annoyed she's laughing in the sunshine with someone who doesn't keep ghosting. Someone who actually knows how to smile without looking like he's passing a kidney stone." Edward opened his mouth, perfect vampire teeth gleaming as if ready to defend his honor. Mabs beat him to it with the timing of a comedian who'd been waiting for the perfect moment to deliver the punchline. Classic. You've got the emotional range of a teaspoon and the self-awareness of a brick. Esme choked delicately on her lemonade, covering it with a motherly cough. Alice had to hide her face behind Emmett's shoulder, her small frame shaking with suppressed giggles. Carlyle suddenly became very interested in examining the deck railing, as though it might contain the secrets of vampire medicine. Edward's lips thinned until they nearly disappeared. "This is ridiculous. You're all encouraging this. Bella, you can't seriously want this creature around." There was a note of pleading in his voice now, as if he were the reasonable one in a world gone mad. Bella lifted her chin, a subtle rebellion that transformed her soft features into something stronger. "Actually, I do." He blinked, genuine surprise crossing his features. "You do?" The concept seemed to short-circuit something fundamental in his worldview. "Yes," she said, voice calm but firm, like steel wrapped in silk. "She brightens my day. She keeps everyone laughing. She's warm and honest and exactly what this too-serious household needs. Plus, she's already picked out her accessories." Each reason was delivered like a quiet brick building a wall between them. "I prefer crushed velvet," Mabs preened, gently flexing her claws against Bella's jeans. "Midnight blue with a silver charm, and perhaps a tiny bell, just so I can remove it dramatically when I'm hunting mice." "She's clouding your judgment," Edward attempted, his voice taking on that particular tone he used when he thought he knew what was best for everyone within a 5-mile radius. "She's revealing truths," Bella corrected, "not missing a beat. Uncomfortable ones, perhaps, but truths all the same." "She doesn't belong here with us." Edward's hands clenched at his sides, knuckles white even for a vampire. "She's found her place," Bella said with quiet finality, her tone brooking no argument. The statement carried the weight of every decision Edward had ever made for her, now firmly reclaimed. There was a beat of silence, heavy enough to bend the cedar planks beneath their feet. Then Mabs stood up, stretching each leg individually like a tiny gymnast, her tail curling high like a victory banner. "And this, ladies and gentlemen," she announced with the satisfaction of a chess master delivering checkmate, "is precisely why Southern charm triumphs over brooding angst every time. The poetry of life isn't in the tortured silence. It's in knowing when to speak up and when to listen." Emmett lost it completely, his booming laughter probably audible all the way to the Canadian border. Alice actually fell over onto the deck, clutching her stomach as though vampire ads could hurt from laughing too hard. Even Rosalie permitted herself a full smile, which for her was equivalent to rolling on the floor in hysterics. Edward turned without another word, though his perfect vampire hearing surely caught Emmett's whispered "checkmate, bro," and walked back inside, shutting the glass door behind him hard enough to rattle it like a percussion instrument in a symphony of sulking. Bella sighed and looked down at Mabs, who was now cleaning her paw with such smug satisfaction that it should have been illegal in at least 12 states. "You're a menace." And yet, Mabs replied sweetly, licking between her toes with delicate precision. "Irresistible. Like hot fudge on emotional honesty Sundays." Jasper's voice was warm beside her, the southern drawl more pronounced than usual, like honey heated just enough to pour smoothly. "She does have a point, you know." His golden eyes held something that made Bella's pulse stutter in a way he could definitely feel. Bella looked at him, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time without Edward's shadow between them. "About what?" Her voice was soft but steady. He met her eyes, centuries of patience finally rewarded with a moment of perfect clarity. The cowboy. His fingers brushed against hers, cool and certain. "Some of us know how to stick around when the trail gets rough." A tiny, almost imperceptible rumble started in his chest again, that rare vampire purr that spoke volumes without words. Mabs gave a lazy stretch, her paws extending toward the sun. "Told you. Doorway number 1. Wide open and looking mighty inviting if you ask me." Bella just smiled, and this time she didn't look away. The future suddenly seemed full of possibilities that had nothing to do with brooding and everything to do with a certain southern vampire who knew the value of staying. Behind them, Emmett was already taking bets on when Edward would compose his first piano concerto in a minor key about betrayal. Alice, having regained her composure, whispered to Rosalie, "I already ordered the velvet collar, emerald charm included." And on Bella's lap, Mabs settled in like she'd always been there, green eyes closing in contentment. Mission accomplished. Chapter 4. After Edward's dramatic exit, which lacked only a thunderclap and a billowing cape to be truly operatic, peace settled back over the deck like a cozy blanket, fresh from the supernatural dryer. The tension dissolved so quickly that Bella half expected to hear a cartoon pop sound effect. Emmett went inside, mumbling something about needing to write down every insult for future use. Perhaps for a coffee table book titled "How to Verbally Destroy Your Brother, A Cat's Guide to Emotional Warfare." Alice floated off after him, giggling with the delight of someone whose psychic visions were playing out even better than expected. Carlisle and Esme took the empty cookie plate and their lemonade and left with knowing smiles that somehow conveyed both "we approve" and "we saw this coming a century ago." That left Bella, Jasper, and Mabs, the human, the vampire, and the furry warlock in residence. The spring breeze rustled the trees like nature's own applause. Birds chirped what sounded suspiciously like victory songs. Mabs stretched across Bella's lap like a queen in a chaise lounge, extending each limb with the deliberate showmanship of a yoga instructor, before giving a lazy sigh that contained at least 3 centuries of feline satisfaction. So Mabs projected, her mental voice carrying the casual tone of someone about to drop a nuclear-level presumption. About this new arrangement, Bella glanced down, suddenly wary. What arrangement? She could practically hear warning bells. "The one where I move in with you, obviously. I've already picked out which cushions I'll be shedding on and which surfaces I'll be knocking things off at 3 a.m. The cat's eyes gleamed with mischief. Bella blinked. "That's not exactly up to me." She gestured vaguely at the very expensive vampire mansion surrounding them. "I don't even live here." "Oh? I was left on your lap like a divine offering. You rubbed my ears. You accepted the bond. In some cultures, we're practically married now." Mabs licked her paw as if this were settled law. "That's not how this works." Bella fought to keep her face serious. "It is when I say it is. I'm a magical entity with several millennia of experience in getting exactly what I want. And what I want is a human who appreciates quality insults and a vampire who smells like cinnamon and repressed feelings. Jasper chuckled softly, shifting beside her with a grace that made even breathing look like an art form. You'd actually take her in? His voice held genuine curiosity beneath the amusement. Bella shrugged, a smile tugging at her lips. Why not? She's snarky, fluffy, weirdly intuitive, and possibly magical. She fits right in. She gesticulated broadly. Look around. We've got mind readers with hair dependencies, future seers with shopping addictions, and emotion manipulators with southern drawls that could melt butter in Alaska. A telepathic cat is practically normal Tuesday around here. I'm flattered, though I prefer feline goddess of chaos and wisdom to telepathic cat. The latter makes me sound like a carnival sideshow. Jasper tilted his head, lips curving into that little smirk that had been sneaking into Bella's dreams lately. The one that made her wonder exactly how many women had fallen for that exact expression over the last century and a half. What about the cowboy? His voice dropped half an octave, landing somewhere between honey and sin. Bella turned, caught by surprise, her heartbeat betraying her with a stutter that every vampire in a 5-mile radius could probably hear. What about him? She aimed for casual and landed somewhere near breathless. Mabs rolled over with a groan that contained the suffering of all familiars who'd ever had to deal with romantically oblivious humans. Well, before you die of old age, these two will just be eternally frustrating. She lifted her head dramatically, green eyes flicking between them like she was watching the world's slowest tennis match. Is the sexy cowboy coming too? Or is he planning to pine from afar like a discount romance novel cover model? Bella's jaw dropped so fast it nearly detached. What, Mabs? Her voice cracked on the name. Jasper raised both eyebrows and bit back a laugh, though his eyes darkened with something that was definitely not humor. I believe the familiar asked you a question, darlin'. The endearment slipped out like it had been waiting a long time to escape. You want me to move in, Mabs said, licking her paw with exaggerated nonchalance. I need to know who I'm sharing the house with. Will there be brooding? Shirtless brooding? Saddle soap? Do vampires even shower? These are important logistics. I'm not a horse, Jasper muttered, though his eyes never left Bella's increasingly flushed face. Shirtless? Bella echoed, cheeks going from pink to scarlet with the speed of a traffic light changing. The word seemed to hang in the air between them, growing larger and more insistent. Don't lie to me, Swan, Mabs said with the satisfaction of someone playing their trump card. You've imagined it, probably with a cowboy hat, maybe boots, definitely that accent. Your aura goes all fizzy when he talks. Like someone shook a bottle of emotional champagne. Jasper looked very interested now, leaning forward slightly as if being pulled by an invisible thread. Is that so? The southern drawl was suddenly more pronounced, like he dialed it up from Georgia to deep Texas. Bella grabbed a pillow from behind her and pressed it to her face with the force of someone trying to smother spontaneous combustion. I'm going to smother myself right here on this deck. Today's headline: Local woman dies of embarrassment, cat suspected. Jasper leaned a little closer, the scent of leather and pine and something uniquely him invading her senses even through the pillow. You never answered the question. His voice was velvet and gravel and 100 years of patience. What question? She squeaked from behind her cotton shield. Is he coming too? Mabs purred, the mental voice dripping with innuendo, and I mean that in every possible way a question can be interpreted. Bella peeked over the pillow, meeting Jasper's now molten gold eyes. I guess that depends. The boldness in her voice surprised even her. Jasper met her gaze, all pretense of casual interest vanishing like mist in sunlight. On what? The two words contained a century of waiting. On how good he is at cuddling, Mabs interjected with the timing of a vaudeville comedian, and other horizontal activities. Vampires have stamina, you know, just saying. As your official familiar, I should warn you, that's going to be loud. Bella shoved the pillow into Mab's side with enough force to launch a less magical cat into orbit, and the familiar yelped, sounding utterly delighted by the chaos she'd created. Worth it. Then, click, the deck door slid open again with the foreboding sound of an impending sequel nobody asked for. Edward. He looked annoyed in that particular way that suggested he'd spent the last 5 minutes composing the perfect dramatic reentrance in his head. His hair looked even more artfully tousled, if that was possible, as if he'd run his hands through it exactly 17 times for maximum brooding effect. "You're still out here?" he asked, managing to infuse 3 words with enough judgment to fill a Victorian novel. "No," Bella said flatly. "We've transcended to a new plane of sarcasm. We're actually astral projecting from the kitchen, where we're eating ice cream and laughing at your hair." Mabs stood up, tail puffed like a feather duster that had encountered static electricity. "I thought I told you to shoo. Or do you need it in writing? Perhaps a formal eviction notice from the Department of Taking Hints." "I don't take orders from a stray," Edward sniffed, managing to look down his nose despite Bella being seated. "And yet here you are," Mabs observed dryly, "drawn like a moth to irrelevance. The flame of nobody asked you burns bright, and you just can't help yourself." Edward's eyes narrowed to amber slits. "You're letting her influence you." He addressed Bella as if Jasper and the cat had suddenly become invisible. Bella sighed, the sound containing multitudes of exhaustion. "Edward, I've had more actual guidance from a cat with a superiority complex than I've had from most of the people in my life. Let it go." She twirled her finger in a little circle. "Do the Frozen thing. Release the angst. She's clearly manipulative." He pointed an accusing finger at Mabs, who looked profoundly unimpressed. "Thank you," Mabs preened, stretching one paw elegantly. "I am a cat. Manipulation is literally in our species' mission statement. Right after sleep 20 hours a day and knock things off shelves for no reason. I'd be insulted if you thought otherwise." Edward pointed a stiff finger, his posture rigid enough to dust ceiling corners with his hair. "This is absurd." "I like absurd," Bella said, a new lightness in her voice. "It's a nice break from suffocating emotional turmoil. Do you know how refreshing it is to worry about cat hair on my sweaters instead of vampire politics and whether or not I'm going to be eaten by the supernatural monster of the week?" Edward opened his mouth, clearly ready to launch into a lecture worthy of a Victorian schoolmaster. And Mabs meowed. Loud, sharp, and totally ordinary. The sound cut through his preparation like scissors through pretension. He blinked, momentarily derailed. "Did she just... She can still do regular cat things," Bella said sweetly, patting Mabs on the head. "Multitasking. It's wild. She also uses a litter box, which means she's actually better at cleaning up after herself than most men I know." Jasper leaned back with a quiet chuckle that vibrated through the bench and straight into Bella's bones. "You should probably go, man. She's not your audience." The words were gentle but firm, a boundary line drawn in vampire soft tones. Edward's jaw tightened so hard that Bella half expected to hear marble cracking. "She's not yours either." The words came out clipped, jealousy making them sharp around the edges. Bella stood. She wasn't loud. She didn't raise her voice. But when she spoke, the quiet was louder than any shout, filling the space between them with certainty. "She's herself, Edward. That's the point." She looked directly into his topaz eyes, her own clear and steady. "I'm not a possession with an audience. I'm a person making choices. And right now, I'm choosing a telepathic cat and whatever comes next." Mabs hopped off the bench, rubbing her head against Bella's ankle like she'd just won a long game of chess and was now collecting her trophy. The familiar's fur was soft against Bella's skin, a silent alliance. "I like this one," she broadcasted to everyone present, her mental voice warm with approval. "You're keeping her. And the cowboy, too. He looks good in jeans, and his emotional range exceeds that of a particularly dense rock. Marriage material, if you ask me." "Damn right," Bella murmured, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. Edward didn't reply, His face cycled through several expressions: hurt, anger, resignation, before settling on a mask of indifference that might have been convincing if Jasper couldn't literally feel the emotions pouring off him. He turned with vampire grace and walked back into the house again for what Bella hoped was the final time, at least until dinner, when the awkwardness would reach new, spectacular heights. Jasper stood too, brushing his hand gently against hers. The touch was feather-light but electric, sending shivers up her arm that had nothing to do with his temperature. "You serious about letting her live with you?" His voice was carefully neutral, but his eyes were anything but. Bella looked down at the familiar, who was now making biscuits on the outdoor cushion like she owned the place, paws working the fabric with practiced precision. The cat looked perfectly at home, as if she'd been waiting for this exact cushion her entire magical life. "Yeah," she said, a smile spreading across her face. "I think I am." "Good," Mabs yawned, showing tiny fangs. "I'll need a corner of your bed, the one by the window for optimal birdwatching. 2 bowls, crystal, not plastic, because I have standards, and whatever brand of tuna Esme keeps in the pantry. The expensive stuff, not that mockery of fish products from the grocery store." Bella rolled her eyes and smiled, finding comfort in the cat's outrageous demands. "Anything else, Your Majesty?" "A scratching post made of Edward's favorite belongings would be nice, but I can improvise." Jasper leaned closer, his shoulder brushing against hers in a not at all accidental way. "Still clinging to your humanity?" The question echoed their earlier conversation, but now carried new weight. Bella looked at him, really looked at him, taking in the golden eyes that held decades of patience, the slight curl at the corner of his mouth, the quiet strength that didn't need to announce itself. "Nah," she said softly. "I think I'm finally enjoying the weird." He smiled. Slow and sweet and full of promise. "The weird looks good on you, darlin'." And behind them, Mabs stretched out like royalty on her newly claimed throne and whispered into the breeze, her mental voice carrying just enough for both of them to hear. "The cowboy always gets the girl, and the cat gets the prime sleeping spots. Everybody wins, except Captain Constipation, and honestly, who cares?" Somewhere inside the house, a piano began to play in a minor key. Mabs's whiskers twitched with satisfaction. Mission accomplished.
And that's the end of this story. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed it, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and share it with a friend who loves stories too. Your support helps me keep creating and sharing more tales with you. I'll be back soon with more adventures, so watch for the next story. Until then, take care and happy listening.